they were kind of making the point that we don't
It's
really
better than
play to what.
Mitrovic.
Yeah.
There's your headline.
There's your headline.
David will be putting that on the front of the Examiner next. Danny Ward, better than Mitrovic.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Let's not slumber in the Humber. Welcome to the warm-up episode 67. Joining me, your host, Brady Frost, is Tom Bradshaw, as always. And we're joined today by Yorkshire Live and host of the Championship Chat podcast, Elliott Jackson. How are you both?
Yes, good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on once again, Elliott. Tom, we always have you on, but it's always good to have you on.
Oh, thanks, Brady. How are you this week, mate? You all right?
I'm good, mate, yeah. I really enjoyed the International 11 that we did. We got a lot of nice comments on that and some good teams. So cheers to everyone who submitted their team. I think you probably did better than us, and you certainly did better than Tom. Because
yeah, but my team was full of heart. That's all I care about,
and that's what wins you games. Lovely stuff. Well, as fun as the International Town 11 was, we're back to our bread and butter, if you like, because it's got a game to preview, and it's a big one. We were chatting about it before we started recording, really. So it's the Friday night trip to the Humberside and Huddersfield. On paper, I think this is a game we need to win, but it looks like a good game that we could get a good result from. The reason I say that is Hull have won just 2 of their last 11 league games, and they haven't won at home since January. So they're 20th in the table, under no threat of relegation, it seems, having a 13-point gap from 22nd place Barnsley. But, to use the cliche, this league unpredictable. But, yeah. Town have won 3 of the last 4 games against Hull too, which surprised me, Tom. The most recent of which came in October, the 2-0 one. 2-0, I can't speak today, 2-0 win. Anyway, Tom, we talked about the 2 defeats before the international break. We felt a bit deflated. That's why we did the international pod to distract us. But you look at everything heading into this one. Town have got to win this, really, haven't they? And they've got a good chance of doing so.
This is a massive game, innit? I think, and they've got to win. I think we needed that international break, and I think we'll kind of see if that break has helped the players at all in the performance we're going to see against Hull. The way Hull have been playing lately, you'd like to think we'd win it, but the way we've been playing lately, you don't know. But I don't. It's so tight in it as well up there, and it's really annoying because we're so close to the end of the season now. And if we now go on that run that kind of every team goes on, there's no way back from that. So it's a must win, in it, Brady.
Yeah, I mean, Elliott, you're in. You've covered Huddersfield before for Yorkshire Live. You're not a Town fan, so maybe you can have a more objective view. Do Huddersfield, are they going to win this, do you think?
I think they've got a good chance. I agree with you that I think it's must win, and as I was saying off air, I think that given the trio of fixtures you've got to come with Luton, QPR and Middlesbrough, which are obviously going to be massive 6-pointers to use the cliche nice and early in the podcast. I think that this game will completely dictate how you go into those games after picking up 1 point in 3 games. The international break's a nice time to reset. I think we all would agree that you should have won at West Brom. You were very unlucky to give away the penalty that swung the momentum in that game. And then you were outclassed by Bournemouth, but that can happen to anyone. They're the second best team in the division and can outclass anyone on their day. So there's no shame in that either. That said, a defeat to Hull would be completely different and would give everyone a different mentality going into those next 3 fixtures. So I think this is probably your biggest game of the season so far. But then, when we get to this part of the season, you'll probably say that before every fixture. But it will dictate, in my mind, so much of the mentality and the positivity around the club heading into those crucial fixtures that are going to come up afterwards.
And we talked about this before on the pod earlier, but obviously because we had 2 defeats in a row after going unbeaten for so long, it seems to sting a little bit more. But from the outside perspective, obviously you cover the Championship as a whole. Are we just getting a bit, are we being a bit pessimistic for the sake, is it not that bad when you consider it's only 2 defeats in 19?
No, not at all. I think, if we're going to really zoom out, I think a lot of people would have absolutely, snatched at the chance to finish in the top half for Huddersfield Town this season. I certainly didn't predict them to be in the top half based on what I saw in pre-season. And it's been a fantastic season. We shouldn't lose sight of that. Totally understand that when you've been in the playoffs and up to third at one point for as long as Huddersfield Town have been, you start to dream. And if they were to drop out the playoffs, it would seem a disappointment to fans. But when you think on the reflection of the whole season, this is a massive overachievement, whether Huddersfield Town finish third, 6th or 10th. That's the reality of it. That said, when you're 4th in the table with 7 games to go, it would be a disappointment if you didn't get in the playoffs. But no, certainly I think when you look at the manner of the results, say the draw at West Brom was 2 points drop, but I do think the momentum was completely swung by a bad refereeing decision. You're not the first team to go away to Millwall on a Tuesday night and get beaten. Benicophobe with 2 very good finishes in that one, and then it's quite easy to get outclassed by Bournemouth. And probably the Bournemouth one was the one where you look most jaded, perhaps. But then that's also the one where you played the toughest and the best opposition, apart from Fulham, that you could face in the division. So I think the international break came at a good time. I think it came at a good time for a lot of teams, to be honest, in that sort of playoff picture. So I had a running theme when we were reviewing the last round of fixtures that we kept saying that for other teams in and around the playoffs. But I think Huddersfield are in a good spot. I'd say this whole game will really be a good indicator for me as to whether it's a blip and if they can get a positive result in a game they should win as well. It's a game that they should be targeting 3 points, or if it's anything more sinister in the recent drop off in points tally.
Yeah, and Tom Elliott touched on it there. This is a must win, but Hull, despite their position, they do have some good players. Who did you pick from the Tigers?
Well, Brady, I picked Ryan Longman as my key player. 5 goals, 4 assists. There's a good little bit of research for you from me. He's originally was at Brighton as a youth player. Had a loan spell at Wimbledon and then at Hull, and then Hull have now signed him this season. I think is that correct, Elliott?
In January, signed him on a permanent deal.
But he was linked with us, Brady. He was and I think we spoke about it before, and I think Matt said it I think Matt even sent me something in January like, oh, we might sign this guy, and thought he sounds like a decent little player, and he's done quite well for Hull this season in a team that, for me, right, I always associate Hull as kind of quite a rough, strong, physical team of when Town have played Hull over the past. And as Hull sides go, I think this is kind of one that I look at, and it's not one of those typical Hull sides. So I think he's done quite well in a side that maybe doesn't have that kind of physicality that I associate Hull with.
Yeah, definitely. Elliot, I'll let you go first because you're the guest. Who did you pick?
That's very gracious of you. So, there's a few players. Obviously, Keane Lewis Potter's the obvious one, but I think George Honeyman's probably the one that might go under the radar, and certainly Hull's record with him in the team and without him in the team is quite stark, really, and it would be quite easy to for that to go under the radar. I'd say he's the captain. He was Player of the Year in League One last year, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that. Certainly Hull City's Player of the Year last year. And he just brings goals from midfield, and they haven't got an abundance of goal scorers, and that's the thing. So Keane Lewis Potter's not putting the ball in the back of the net. This was a concern of mine in pre-season when we were trying to judge them. Tom Eaves is not prolific at this level. Neither was Josh McGuinness before he moved back to Wigan in January. So you're like, where are the goals going to come from? Keane Lewis Potter's obviously the biggest source of goals. Malik Wilks was last season, not really got into not proven that he's at championship standard in a couple of seasons now at this level. Ryan Longman's been very good this season as well. He's played in a variety of roles. He's had to play. He played up front for AFC Wimbledon last season, and then he's been playing predominantly as a wing back in this 3-5-2 system that Hull have played in this season. But yeah, George Honeyman's crucial because if Keane Lewis Potter's playing as one of the strikers, he's obviously the main goal threat, and then they're going to have a target man, usually Eaves, Marcus Force perhaps, who is more of a goal threat, but obviously only came in January and hasn't quite hit the heights that people were hoping for. And Honeyman just has that creativity in midfield. He's just a bit all action, can do a little bit of everything, and he's brilliant at popping up in the box. And whether it's a header that I remember him scoring earlier in the season, I think it was at Birmingham, or whether it's, arriving late runs, typical sort of Frank Lampard-esque, coming into the box and finishing chances that way. He's really, really important to how that whole side play.
And he's out of contract at the end of the season, isn't he?
He is, yeah, which is a weird one. He said publicly that he wants a new deal, and it's not been agreed yet. I know the new owners are going to put more money into the club and have ambitions for the playoffs, but he's one of their best players, and it would be an absolute no-brainer for me if he's willing to sign the deal. In my eyes, it would be more, does George Honeyman want to stay rather than the Hull City want to keep George Honeyman? So it's a bit of a weird dynamic that, but without being too plugged in. It's a bit of a strange one. I would be snapping his hand off if George Honeyman wants to sign a new deal.
Yeah, and Tom, we've talked about it before. The Huddersfield Town recruitment team definitely listens to this podcast. All I'm saying is, FIFA career mode, I have signed him for Town before, and he's gone on to do great. So Lee Bromby, if you're listening,
great player.
Yeah, there you go. Done your scouting for you, mate. We can sort out payments later, or a commission.
I was going to say, do you get a commission?
I should hope so. Lee, we can discuss that after recording.
Elliott, just a quick one, Elliott. So, because you mentioned Wilkes there, and I was thinking that as well this season. I thought, he had a really good season for him in League One, didn't he, last year? And
he did, yes.
Why can't he make that step up, do you think?
I know, it's interesting. I thought attracting me always looked decent at Leeds, and then he had a loan spell at Doncaster where he hit double figures as well. And then he went to Barnsley for 6 months, did nothing, and then Hull bought him 6 months later. So it was a bit of a weird career trajectory. And Hull played 4-3-3 throughout the League One title win. So obviously Keane Lewis-Potter coming from the left, Wilkes coming from the right, and then they were just leaking way too many goals this season at the start of the season. Couldn't buy a win. He shifted to 3-5-2. And there's no natural place for him in that team. Keane Lewis-Potter, although he's predominantly plays from the left, he can play up front as well. He carries that goal threat. Wilkes is a kind of an out-and-out winger with a bit of a goal threat, but you wouldn't play Lewis-Potter and Wilkes as your two strikers. That just wouldn't work. So it's kind of one or the other. And he doesn't really have the skill set to play as a wing-back. He's also a left-footer, plays on the right. So you don't really want to, if you're going to play a winger at wing-back, it would be he would play on the left, and that doesn't really suit his game because he's left-footed, whereas Ryan Longman, who you discussed, who's been playing in that role, a lot more industrious, a lot more hard-working on the defensive side as well, and quite two-footed, so he can really play on either wing-back. So that's how he's got in the team. And Wilkes has had an injury recently, so he's been out for a couple of months. But yeah, he's someone I've always thought's got the potential to play at Championship level, especially when he scored 20-odd goals, I think it was, in League One last year. But then he's never been able to show that consistency at Championship level. Slightly unfortunate, as I say, with the formation tweak. But even so, he's never ripped it up in a couple of chances now. So time's sort of not running out for him, but he's yet to really prove that he can cut it at this level.
There you go. That's why I have you on, Elliott. Look at that insight. You've touched on my key player for Hull quite a few times, but Keane Lewis-Potter, he's the obvious one, isn't he? He's the tap-in. Got called up for the England under-21s. Fully deserved. Elliott, you're probably able to tell better than us, but I think when you look at players like him, I think from what I've seen of him, obviously I don't watch Hull every week, but he seems to me he could have a similar trajectory to Jared Bowen in terms of, there's a lot. I suppose you can make a lot of comparisons with them. They are slightly different, but he just looks like a hell of a talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the Premier League. I know there's been interest, and I think he could go on and be excellent. Like you say, he's been a winger before, but he can also play in it too. And yeah, I think he's the danger man. And I don't know, just want to watch out, but wouldn't be surprised if we hear his name more and more often, as it goes.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yeah. I think the interesting thing with him compared to Bowen's probably more of certainly at Championship level, more of an out-and-out scorer. I would say Lewis-Potter's probably a little bit more, he does that role very much so in the fact he's playing up front, but he's probably, when he plays out wide, he's a bit more of a creator than Bowen perhaps was, whereas Bowen was more just goals. But yeah, Brentford were interested in January. I think they're sort of kind of trying to pick between him and Brennan Johnson at the minute. I don't think they'll sign both, but if they can't get Brendan Johnson as somewhere Forest went up, for example, or whatever, I think they'll be back in for Lewis-Potter, and there'll definitely be Premier League clubs that are interested in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. But enough about Hull. We're not a Hull podcast. We're a Town podcast. Tom, who's your key player for this? Obviously, a bit of a break. We'll get on to how we're lining up the team, but could make a few interesting choices, freshen it up. But who do you think is going to be the main man for this one?
Well, like you mentioned, a bit of a break, and I think this is a game where we can kind of exploit us the strength we've got in our set pieces. And I know it seems like people have figured us out a bit, but I feel like Sorba Thomas could be quite key in this game. I mean, we've said he's dipped a bit recently, especially against Millwall. It was like Scott Malone were running him ragged, which was a bit frustrating because we know Scott Malone's fast, and we know he's not a terrible player, but it was like he was making Sorba Thomas look like Danny Adams at points, like the way he was getting past him with his pace. So I just think if Sorba has had that nice little break and he can just step it up a bit, and I just think if his delivery is on point, like when we did the preview for the West Brom game, that the goal that they scored against Hull was that really good delivery from Moet, wasn't it, Brady, that I mentioned, and it was just one of those where it just caused so much trouble in that box. And we've scored a lot of goals from set pieces this season, so yeah, I'd like to see Sorba whipping some devilish balls into the box.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? And it's funny you talk about that, because I remember when in the game we won 2-0 in October, every team had figured out our corner routine apart from Hull, and we scored obviously from the corner. And I was like, I mean, come on, like we've been doing that for like every game, so he's hoping for more of the same. But yeah, but I don't think he started. Did he come on against Austria? I don't know, but
I don't think he did. No.
Yeah, but you know, if he has had a break, even if he's training with Wales, that's only going to benefit us for the run-in. So great shout, and we all love him, don't we? I mean, how can who doesn't? But yeah,
I mean, shout. Is he playing tonight?
I think he started tonight. I'm pretty sure.
Tonight. All right.
Started tonight at right wing back.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that gives him a bit of a boost. I don't know if it was like it just wasn't 100% there, and I don't know if that's sometimes when he's gone on international break before, where maybe he's just a bit too excited to be going out to literally play with the likes of Ramsey and Bale. Do you know what I mean? Even just training with them, which is like insane. Like we've mentioned it every podcast. He was only playing non-league like a day ago or whatever it was.
Well, do you think that's part of it, Tom? Do you think it's just like, obviously this is his first proper season and he's probably just a bit...
Well, yeah, obviously that as well, yeah.
Sorry, you were joking then, and I was like, I'm going to make a serious point.
But he's so key, isn't it? That's kind of not the frustrating thing, but it's because to expect him to have that consistency already after just coming up from the conference is insane, to think that he can do that straight away, because it is a different level. It's more work, it's harder, he's worked hard. But it's just kind of frustrating because you know how good he is and how key he is to us. And it is kind of a bit like if he plays well and he creates, then we're going to have a good game.
Yeah, 100%. And here's hoping, like you say, I think he's probably just been a bit knackered, and we know what he can do. And, Elliott touched on the West Brom game earlier. I thought he was actually great in that game until the dubious penalty. And I don't think you can even really blame him. But, that was a couple of games ago. We'll move on. Elliott, who do you pick from Town? Who's caught the eye for you in this one?
Well, interestingly, he might not even start, but I think similar theme. I think the wingers are going to be replayed. I think I would be chucking Josh Koroma in for this one. I know he's not played every game from the left, which has been a bit of a weird one as an outsider, not given how well he did last season. You sort of felt that he was going to be guaranteed to be Huddersfield's top scorer at the start of the season, but it's not quite gone that way. I know Dwayne Holmes might play off that left-hand side, but I just feel that with the back three that Hull will play against the most likely 4-3-3 that Town will play, that space between the right centre-back and the right wing-back, if it's Longman playing up there, he's obviously more naturally a forward player. There might be space there that he can exploit, and we know he's really good at getting in those inside channels, coming in on that right foot and unleashing a bending shot into the top corner. So I think that's certainly an area they could exploit. Maybe more so down that side than the other side, because Jacob Greaves usually plays on left centre-back and he's Hull's best centre-half by some distance. But depending who plays on that right-hand side, I think if Koroma gets the nod, then I think I would be going that way, because I like Dwayne Holmes a lot, but I just think for this game, there might be spaces that a bit more pace and a little bit more of those penetrating runs would probably be more useful against this whole side that will leave spaces sort of in those wide channels, which is where we know that Coroma's best operating in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call because I think I said before we were recording, I was chatting to some Town fans before we jumped on, and I think he's what we need at the moment when we need to freshen things up. We're in a bit of a slump, and Cromer's one of them to me. This is old football man chat, but he can do nothing for 75 minutes, but then he can just score a goal. I think he's got that, out of nowhere, that 25-yard, and I think that's what we're missing. And I think you're right, Elliott. We might need that in that game, especially the space.
I hope that, because he hasn't really played for a while, Brady, but I just hope that because they'll see it, won't they? But the last few games he did play, it's been the only thing that's been wrong with him has been his decision making. He's been trying to do too much stuff on his own, and the one big one that was really frustrating, I mean, luckily we went on to get the 3 points, but that Cardiff at home where it was almost 3-on-2 for Town and Coroma had 2 men either side, and he just ran straight at the centre-back, and then by the time he hadn't decided, he'd been tackled. So I think that's just one part of his game this season that he's just been a bit off, and hopefully like this spell out the team, maybe he's just either worked on that a bit or just got his head in a better space, because he's a great player. I mean, look, this last season, problem with this COVID thing is that I don't know when any season was now, but it was last season, wasn't it, where he was our best player?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then he got injured from doing a back heel or whatever, and then he was out for the rest of the season. But yeah, no, you touch on that, like you mentioned the Cardiff game there, like his decision making, but then he scores the equaliser, doesn't he?
Yeah,
and that's the type of player he is. Really good shout. I've gone for another bit of an obvious one. I'm in an attacking mood tonight, clearly, because I've gone for Danny Ward. Not scored since West Brom, but I got a feeling this is like a Danny Ward. Danny Ward's going to get the winner here. I just got a feeling. And as I always peddle, Tom, my favourite stat in the league this season, if Danny Ward scores or assists, Town have not lost the game. So maybe that's just a bit of luck. But yeah, Danny, we've talked about it every week, Tom, but Danny Ward's been amazing this season. I've caught some of the Utabia podcasts earlier, and they delved into the metrics, in terms of attacking play and shots. And Mitrovic obviously is scoring like 2 goals every single game, but he's had 4.5 shots a game, and Danny Ward's had 2, and Danny Ward's got 13 goals. So, they were kind of making the point that we don't really play towards. Yeah.
There's your headline.
There's your headline.
David will be putting that on the front of the Examiner next. Danny Ward better than Mitrovic.
Danny Ward better than Mitrovic, and that's why
to go next to with Lee Nichols should be
England. Yeah. I hope he listens to this again.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. I'm sure I'll get the lovely text message. Danny Ward's been amazing, and I think the point is the stats prove it. And if we play to him more like Fulham do to Mitrovic, I think he probably would score a lot more. So the fact that he's got 13 goals from half as many shots just kind of highlights how impressive he is. But back him to score. Heard rumours he's shaved his head as well. Don't know if that's confirmed.
Ooh, that'll be exciting. Yeah. I remember last time he had a buzz cut.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Was that when he scored the hat-trick on the last?
No, maybe. It was around that time though, yeah. I feel like he'd started growing it long by then. Maybe we'll do a deep dive into Danny Ward hairstyles over the year. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Next international break.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've got to have some filler. I mean, let's be honest, when the summer's over, Tom, we're going to have to think of some stuff to fill. So do send in if you want Danny Ward haircuts throughout the years. So
Danny Ward haircut throughout the year.
How many listeners will we get for that? I think you'd be surprised. Anyway, we'll spare Elliott. We'll move on because it's time for View from the Other Side. So I caught up with Ant from the Hull City fan podcast to Hull and Back ahead of the game, and here's what he had to say.
We've lost to a pub side. We've literally lost to a pub side.
Hi Ant, thanks for joining me. So how have things been with the Tigers since the takeover and the departure of Grant McCann?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me on. Well, do you know what? The feeling at the club since the takeover and obviously McCann leaving, it's something that the fans have been waiting for years. You know, the tenure of the Alams had really gone past its expiry date. Really, relations between us and the owners are just completely diminished. All trust was gone. There was no communication. There was no transparency. The club was heading. Well, it was on a downward spiral. I know we won the league last season, but you know, since if you look back that we were in a FA Cup final and staying up in the Premier League a few years ago, to go down to League One and then come back up, when realistically we probably shouldn't have gone down in the first place, probably suggests that, you know, things are kind of just going back to normal. With McCann leaving, it may have looked harsh at the time. Obviously, he started picking up some good results towards the end, but the decision to replace McCann had been made months ago, as Shota said before he took over. You know, McCann's championship record, maybe because he'd sort of had his hands tied in terms of budget that he had available whenever he's here, and he had his best players sold, etc. But his record at championship level is absolutely dreadful. So he probably wasn't going to be the ideal man to take us forwards. So we're looking. We've actually got optimism as a football club for once. So it's. You know, we're kind of just limping over the finish line this season because we didn't really have enough time in the transfer window to really make a difference, and we were paying off loans and severing all ties with the Alams. So, you know, if we can just stay up this season like it looks like we're going to, and then build next season with summer, hopefully a few.
And how are you feeling about the game on Friday?
Yeah, we're under no illusions how tough Friday is going to be. Probably even more so now that we're on Sky, because that's our curse. We never really perform on there. But you know, Huddersfield obviously went on that really good unbeaten run. It's kind of tailed off lately, but still up in the top six. Still looking like they're going to definitely be fighting for a playoff place at minimum. You know, there's a lot of quality in the side. They've got danger all over. Players like Sorba Thomas, who's really been a revelation this season. It's it's one of them. We look relatively safe. Obviously, mathematically, we can still go down, so there's always going to be that little sort of hesitation on our part to sort of declare any sort of game we have at the minute as a null one. But it'll be a game. I mean, I think all the fans are after at the minute is performances. We want the team to go out there and actually perform well. You know, maybe see some of this attacking football that we've been promised to see. That, you know, maybe start incorporating it now, ready for next season. You know, just go out there and play without any fear. Really, I'm like we say, like, because we're not mathematically safe, we'll probably try and play a bit more reserved. But we've been so poor at home. Only scored one goal in the last 5 games and lost 5 in a row here at the MKM. So unfortunately, I can't imagine optimism being very high for a win. But then again, it could be very typical of Hull City that, you know, we tend to play better against the sides higher up in the league than we do the ones around us. So maybe a shock result on the card, but I would very much doubt it. And I'm probably predicting a Huddersfield win.
And finally, where do you expect the game to be won or lost from Hull's perspective?
For us to win games, we have like 2 or 3 key players that need to perform throughout the entire 90 minutes to ensure that we can get any sort of a result. You know, Keane Lewis-Potter has been lethal this season, our top scorer, arguably our most threatening player. George Honeyman, our midfield maestro, if he tends to have that sort of effect that if he doesn't play well, then we don't play well. He's our creative outlet. He will run the game if he's running his box-to-box style that he does, you know, coming back, winning the ball back, but then going up and then also creating chances at the same time. He makes us tick. He's the whole team goes through him kind of thing. So if you can mark him out the game, then we will struggle to create any sort of chance. And if we do create chances, another Achilles heel of ours is that we don't tend to put chances away. We, especially at the moment when we're not really, you know, scoring many, not having many chances per game, we need to start actually putting the chances we do have away, which we're not doing. We're very wasteful. You know, we've got a young inexperienced side. Sorry, so you know that they're still on a learning curve, but we definitely need the likes of Keane Lewis-Potter, George Honeyman, and Ryan Longman, or whoever ends up playing wing back on the right hand side for us needs to be performing. But we've got a couple of surprise players that you may not have maybe heard of or expected to be good. But Brandon Fleming, our left wing back, has been outstanding since coming in the side. I think he's had like 4 or 5 team of the week since being introduced to the side in January after injury. Another local lad, fans love him. And then our back three, who are very young but also been very capable this season. Like, we don't tend to lose by many. We just don't tend to score many. So if you score 1 or 2, if you go in front, then the chances are that you'll win.
Okay, so we heard from Ant. I love that podcast name, by the way.
Good name.
That's the best one.
Have you? That's an Only Fools and Horses episode, isn't it, or a movie? Pretty sure. I think they're supposed
you don't sound so convinced.
No, I think they're supposed to be going to like Amsterdam or something, but they only get to Hull. It's. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes me. I just think of another podcast we listened to, Tom, where Roy Keane said, "Welcome to hell" at Ipswich.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough of this. Let's get those rose tinted glasses on because it's time for Return to the Mac.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. De Platter's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Platter scored! What a goal, Aaron Moy! An absolute thunderbolt delivered all the way from Australia.
Return to the Mac. Okay, so you know the score. Former Town player who's coming in. Elliott, you're the guest. We'll let you go first because you've picked your choice. I heard it might be interesting. Who have you gone for?
So I'm trying to think of what will give Huddersfield Town the upper edge against this Hull side. And I think that sort of control in midfield, turnover in possession, recycling the ball, relentless attacks. I think that's where you can get some joy out of this Hull side. As much as I've waxed lyrical about George Honeyman, I think they don't have a natural sort of controller in that midfield area. So I think someone like Aaron Moy, if we could bring him back, I know that's probably a bit obvious, given he's probably one of the best Huddersfield Town players that's played in recent years.
Call it off now, Brady.
Yeah, that's winning the poll, isn't it?
But someone that can hold the ball, that has that extra quality, just even take the sting out of the game, because Hull will obviously have some spells in the game, but just take the sting out of the game for 10 minutes, just dictate play, hold possession. And as I say, in that midfield area, although Honeyman's someone who's a key man for them, he is more advanced in sort of those deeper sort of areas. And I definitely think if they had someone like that alongside Hogg and O'Brien, for example, going into the weekend game, that would make them a hell of a lot stronger. So maybe slightly cheating, but Aaron Moy for me.
No, mate, you're the guest. You got to go big. You want to win. That's what we like to see.
I should have gone for something more niche like Alan Lee or something, shouldn't I?
Oh, well, Tom loves Alan Lee. Don't get him started. That was half our international podcast. Okay, so Elliott, interesting one actually, because when we do hot takes, which we'll come on to, we had one a couple of weeks ago that said O'Brien is better than Moy. Obviously, different players, but
wait, Brady, you that's a bit. Come on, so Elliott, it wasn't he's outright better than him. The actual thing was if you did a top trumps of pace, passing, shooting, aggression, fitness,
yeah,
Lewis O'Brien would be better than Aaron Moy.
This feels like on FIFA where they've got like in-game stats and you add them all up. Basically, it probably would have more in-game stats because like his running ability and physical ability would probably be higher. So I probably would agree with that on that basis, but not necessarily that he's a better player.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Tom, you had to add in the logic there. I was trying to get more headlines.
Yeah,
I was going to say there he is. He's trying to. Well, I was the journalist here trying to reel people into
playing your own game.
Sorry, Brady. Sorry.
I've been played at my own game.
Yeah,
I'll shut up from now on when you're trying to wind someone up.
Yeah, God, yeah, you're just that's fine. Tom, do you have anyone who beats Aaron Moy?
Well, I don't. I think the guy that I've got doesn't beat Aaron Moy, so I was trying to think of anyone else, and I actually can't. I actually can't think of anyone else who potentially would even come close. But I might just throw it in there anyway. The one that I think might come close. I'll go with Andy Booth for mine because
my God,
I've never picked Booth.
You haven't.
I actually had John Stead down, which I think would be quite good. Only because I remember when Steady first came onto the scene. That first kind of game he played in the Jacko season, and he scored against Hull. He had a really good game, and actually Boovy scored that day as well. This is way back 2003. So I'm just going to go big Andy Booth. Andy Booth header from these corners that Sorba's going to be flying in.
Oh yeah,
Andy Booth be getting a hat trick.
He would. Oh God, can you imagine? Yeah, that is quite a sight. Andy Booth on the end of a Sorba Thomas delivery.
I mean, I've only changed the Boovy because it's going to be really interesting to see. Because whenever someone picks Aaron Moy, it is like Moy. Because at the end of the day, Elliott, no one listens to the podcast all the way through before voting. They normally just vote straight away, I think. So,
yeah.
So it's normally just like, who's your favourite ever Town player? Basically.
So, okay. So my choice isn't going to win out of those two. But
so
Tom,
you're going with someone else?
Well, no. I'm going to pick it.
Okay.
Because Tom, during the International Town pod, you made me think more about this player, and I had a little bit more respect for him. And Elliott touched on it with Koroma. We talked about it, how you want a winger that might do nothing but can do something special out of nowhere. Like 8 minutes in. Rajiv Van Lapara.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Mustafa Karayol.
No way. A big Raj, because I remember that West Brom game in the Premier League. Ajtak scored an amazing goal out of nowhere, and he was like, when you think again, old football man, when you think of typical wingers, I think of Van Lapara, because he was great, but he was the typical. He'd rather beat 3 men and then cross it than just do the cross to get it. And I just think maybe we needed
his highlight reel would have been amazing. It'd be like where people Olivier Giroud shows people his highlight reel, they'll think he was like Puskas or something. Van Lapara could be essentially like Tarapt if you watched his highlight reel.
He got you up the pitch though, didn't he? Got you up the pitch. And I think
then lost it.
Well, yeah. But in that first Premier League season when it was backs against the wall basically every game, you at least got a little bit of respite from him kind of making some yards up the pitch. But you're right, his highlights reel would make him look unbelievable.
And what other player can say they were hauled off against Luton at half-time and then sold to Red Star Belgrade, and then the next game was Bayern Munich? I mean, how many people got Luton Bayern Munich?
That was insane, that, wasn't it? It was so weird.
I think, we don't need to get into the weirdness of that season.
And now he's in Greece.
4 hours. Yeah.
Where's he playing now?
Some Greek side, Elliott. Not even. I
feel like every like championship winger like that goes there to die. It's like,
it's a nice job if you can get it.
I'm not knocking it.
Well, this is why it's a good time to announce that Tom and I will now be doing the podcast exclusively from Greece.
Enjoy Mykonos.
Yeah, exactly. And he takes that Mykonos.
It's really nice of you to fly all your guests out as well. Really.
Oh yeah. Anyway, I forgot to hang on. Oh, we're not quite there yet. But Tom, I've got some Matt news about jingles, but we're not there yet. Anyway, it's time for You're the Boss. So, Elliott, again, because you're the guest, I asked this to all the guests. This is when Tom rolls his eyes and it's like, oh, he's asking this question again. So Carlos isn't in the dugout.
It's a good question.
You are in the dugout. You are the town manager for this game. But before you talk about the team and what the starting 11 would be, what's your managerial attire? Are you a tracksuit man? Are you a suit man? Are you going for
I think different? away from home tracksuit, and then a bit smarter at home.
Right. Why tracksuit away from home and smarter?
I just feel like you might have travelled on the day of the game, unless it's, if for Hull, for example, you probably travelled the morning of. It's not too far from Huddersfield. You're probably looking at just over an hour. So I just feel like it's a bit more comfy. I feel like it's a bit more, we're coming to your place. Whereas I think when you're at home, you're in your own surroundings, a little bit smarter, a little bit more welcoming, perhaps. So I would go maybe not suit and tie job unless it's a very big game, but still a bit smarter nice. on the touchline.
Elliott, are you Chris Powell?
Could be.
That is literally.
It's Chris not the Powell first time I've been accused of being Chris Powell.
That's literally when he was asked why he does that at Town, that was his whole thing. When it was like, why do you wear a suit at home and then wear tracksuit away? And
so I'm as good a manager as Chris Powell. That's the next headline, right?
Yeah,
that's the next headline.
That'll be it.
Chris Powell's in the England setup now, though. So Elliott play cards, right?
There I am on a podcast.
Yeah, there you go. It starts. Question: the cardinal sin though is when you wear your tracksuit, are you wearing trainers or are you wearing football boots?
No, trainers.
Yeah, because
these days it's got to be trainers, hasn't it? Because everything's out.
Yeah, I think in a professional setup, when you like 11-a-side or whatever, if you're ever managing that, then I understand boots a little bit more, but not on that sort of surface.
Although, mate, I'd like to throw out the like copper. Is it the copper? The copper Adidas ones that aren't full on studs. They're like little moldies.
I've actually got those. Those are actually my current football boots. They're very nice.
There you go. I'd maybe wear those with tracksuit. I'd say that's acceptable as well.
Anyway, I like how I'm trying to change the conversation, even though I'm the one who started all this.
Yeah, don't start if you can't handle it, Brady.
Well, this is why people love this pod, Tom, because look, Elliott's given us all this insight on Hull, talked to us about Town, and I've made him talk about football boots and what he's going to wear to.
I like it.
Yeah,
you need that contrast.
You do. Elliott, how would you? What would you start in 11 for Town be in this one then?
Well, obviously, I've said Koroma is someone I would play, so he'll come in on the left. It probably wouldn't change too much outside of that. I think I would put Sinani in midfield, a little bit more offensive, perhaps. I think it's a game they need to go win. So Nichols, Turton, Pearson, Colwill, Toffolo, Hogg sitting, O'Brien and Sinani slightly more advanced, and then Thomas, Ward, and I'd go for Koroma based on the opposition off the left. So a bit harsh on Dwayne Holmes and John Russell, but that's probably what I would go with for this game, because I just think it is must win. And I think Hull are there to be got at as well. I don't think it's a game where they particularly need to sit off and hit on the break, although I do think they'll be spacing those channels for Thomas and Koroma to exploit.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's kind of similar to my lineup, just a couple of tweaks rather than, completely change the format. Tom, are you, we were talking about options, there's quite a few players you can maybe bring in, given because we've had a couple of losses.
Yeah.
Have you gone for anything different?
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, Elliott's is very close to the Sheffield United lineup, isn't it, with Koroma in there, but then Russell out. So maybe I would play Russell. I feel like those two games, that Sheffield United game and the Fulham game, and they were the pretty much carbon copy formations. We played really well, and it might be a bit boring, a bit more defensive, but at this stage of the season, it's kind of grinding it out. So I'd probably go with something similar like that. I'd maybe put Pippa back in there just for that kind of attacking sense. So you've still got those three in the middle who can, because Russell, Hogg and O'Brien in that three in that middle, I think are having a field day against that whole middle, hopefully, touch wood. I just think there's too much strength there and too much like grit that will just overturn the ball in the middle. And I think then Pippa and I'd probably have Thomas, but they could run on and be a kind of attacking options as well. But I don't know, man. I'm happy with that 4-3-3. I think.
Yeah, I think it picks itself. With the three at the back hasn't worked the last couple of games.
I definitely think Koroma coming in is a good idea, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I put Koroma in my team as well, actually. So my front three is Thomas, Ward, and Koroma. But I've dropped Lee's like Elliott has, just because I think he's had he had a bad game against Bournemouth, but like you said, that's not they're one of the best teams in the division. But I just wonder if maybe get Colwill back in, because I think Colwill, particularly in this game, like can offer us a bit more from an attacking sense. I know Lee's
especially if you're probably going to have more of the ball. And obviously Colwill's a very good passer of the ball and very good at driving out of defence. And it's also kind of why I think Sinani, just potentially to unlock the door a little bit more creativity, because you are going to have more of possession in this game. Whereas when you're at a Fulham or, when you're playing the three teams that come up, you would go Hogg, Russell and O'Brien, because you need a bit more industry and a bit more legs in that midfield. But I just think with the amount of ball you might have, not that Hull won't have any possession, but I just think that it's a team that you can dominate in midfield against. So I just think Colwell, it's a good shout, obviously, from a defensive point of view and building up play. And also that's probably why I gave Sinani the nod.
Yeah. I think you touched about will dominate the ball. And this is why I put Carolighton in, because I just think this could be a game for him. We've not really seen him that much. Obviously he didn't have the best game against Forest in the Cup, but, second side, and he's not really had a go since he's joined in January in the first team. So I wonder if this is a game for him, because for me, in terms of midfield, he is a bit of a difference maker, when he is on his game and on his day. So I think, why not? Because I think you're right. We should win this game. And if he's on the front foot and, playing those killer balls, I think we can get some real joy.
He needs options up front, Brady. That's the thing with him. Like you mentioned in that Forest game, I actually, as soon as Danny Ward came on, so that last 25 minutes, I actually thought he had a good game. And it was kind of like once he had a recognised target, he knew where he needed to be passing the ball. And it was kind of the Carolighton we saw whilst he was on loan before. Some of the balls through were great. So I think if he starts the game with Thomas, Ward and Koroma up front, bloody hell, he's got 3 good, smart runners there that are going to make some good runs for him, and could be a good shout, that. Here's one thrown in there for you that I saw they put a picture up of him in training. Is Aaron Rowe going to get a look in before the end of the season?
Interesting. I think maybe not a start, but potentially a bench option. But he was great. I mean, he was quite versatile as well.
I like the look of him last season a lot. Yeah, I thought he looked good, but I don't know. I think when we're at this point of the season with the options you've got out wide and at full back equally, and if you're playing a flat back 4, I'm not sure where he would necessarily come in.
Yeah, it's interesting because that obviously we'd never know, but I almost wonder if he'd, maybe not to the same level because they're different players, but I wonder if he'd have had the breakout season that Sorba's had. But that's ifs and buts, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what I will say before we come on to this, I think this could be a game for Rhodes from the bench. Because
Brady, I bet if we went back through every podcast, I bet you say that nearly every week.
I think I say that every week, but it's gonna. The broken clock is right twice today. It's going to happen, and you know what? I'm going to clip this, Tom, because I'm convinced it's going to happen in this game.
So you're going to be right twice a season,
Tom. You can clip it when he's an unused substitute.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love Rhodes, though. Rhodes does a job. He just needs a goal, doesn't he, Jordan?
Yeah.
He needed a goal for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, Elliott. Anyway, how do you see the game going, Elliott? What's your score prediction?
I think it'll be really interesting how Huddersfield react. And given they've only lost twice in 20 games or whatever the actual numbers are, that you've got to back them. You've got to, believe that it's just a blip for the last few games. And I think it can be easily explained as that. So there's no reason to think otherwise. I think it's a really must-win game. And we know that Hull are on the beach a little bit. They've not really got anything to play for. They got turned over 3-1 by Luton, and that was a game that the scoreline probably wasn't a fair reflection. It should have been a larger margin of victory for Luton. They were very dominant at the MKM Stadium. So the home record's not great. They've not scored a lot of goals, particularly at home as well. I think that late consolation goal was only their second this calendar year or something daft like that, or maybe second since Grant McCann left. So they've not free scoring at home. Huddersfield have been largely very good defensively. And I think if they can score early, I think they'll go on to win the game. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 comfortable victory, which I think you'd all snap your hands off at this point in the season.
100%. And if you had to guess the goal scorers, who are you going for?
I'll go for Danny Ward in the 6th minute, because I think he might get a nice early goal, and then Koroma on the break in the 73rd.
I think you're the first person to ever give us, minutes.
Well, if I'm going to go hard enough to guess the scorers, I might as well chuck the minutes in for a laugh as well.
I like that. Tom's going to say something silly now. Tom, how do you see the game going? No, I feel like you're going to say a ridiculous minute, if there is a ridiculous minute, 90 plus 11. Or whatever.
Yeah. Pretty much agree with Elliott there. I think they might score a goal, though. I do think, just given how we've been the last couple of games, we just looked a little bit shaky, haven't we?
Mhm.
I mean, like you said earlier, you can't. Bournemouth, that squad is unbelievable. So it's kind of it depends how much they're on it. Millwall was annoying because it was a bit of a mistake, especially for the first one. And then West Brom, we lose us heads in the last 10 minutes. So I've gone 3-1 win. I think Sorba Thomas 1, and then Danny Ward will score 2. And Town will score all 3 goals in the last 3 minutes.
Okay, there you go. Again, you always take me somewhere, Tom. You're like, you're being quite negative. You're like, oh yeah, and this and that. You're like, yeah, 3-1 win. Like that's the. I like it. Again, I'd snap your hand off for a 3-1 win. I think Town will also win this, but I think it's going to be really hard fought. And I think when you look back at the end of the season, well, this is just maybe being hopeful, but I think this will be a really key win. I'm going 2-1, and I think it's going to be really hard fought, but will just come good. And I think it could maybe help us, give us a bit of an extra kickstart, for the last couple of games, see what happens. I think Danny Ward's going to, picked him as my key player. I think he's going to score. And I think you're right as well. Elliott, I'm just copying you. I think Karoma's going to score as well. I can see him. This is a game he's going to score in. Don't know how it plays. I'm going to go Honeyman to score for them. Why not? But yeah, we will see. Well, we all predicted a win. So Town fans, look, we're all being positive, and we think we can bounce back. So we'll see. But Tom, I heard you were looking for some hot stuff, baby, this evening. Is that correct?
I was going to later, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, good news, because it's time for hot takes.
Big bleak hot, mate. Big bleak hot, mate.
Yes, this is Hot Takes, the part where you share your spicy opinions you have about Huddersfield Town with your reason why, and we'll debate it on this podcast. Hot Takes will be anonymous. Don't forget to email Brady@takesthatchance.com for a chance to be featured. Before we do the hot take, Elliott looked very baffled then and slightly scared, so I'm glad we've moved on to hot takes. So.
No, not at all.
He knows what I like. Anyway, so I'll come to you first with this one, Elliott, because we've actually had this comparison before, but this one intrigued me because it's a slightly different question. So there's a lot of comparisons between the 16, 17 team and this team, because obviously they're the only teams that have been anywhere near the playoffs. And there's been a lot of comparisons between Carlos and Wagner. So the hot take is this. David Wagner's been sacked by Young Boys. If Town go up this season, I think we should bring back David. So Dean Hoyle and David Wagner are reunited once again.
What, and sack Carlos?
Yeah, that's the hot take. It's not me, mate. Don't...
Just no. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? It's not like David Wagner's had unbelievable success since he left Huddersfield Town, is it?
Yeah, but
no,
emotion...
sorry, that's just a shit opinion. I don't agree with that. I just don't understand. I think that one's built out of nostalgia rather than any sort of logic, which often these are. But no, I can't even slightly get behind. I could sort of get behind the one that you spoke about last about Aaron Moy and O'Brien, but just can't get my head around that one, I'm afraid. If Carlos Corberan leads you up with the budget he's got, he deserves a statue, not sacking for David Wagner, who's hasn't had a good job since he left you.
Well, fiery opinions, that's what we like to see. So do you think if Corberan, so the question is, if we didn't go up, do you think Corberan's still done an amazing job?
I think if you finish in the top half of the table, which you're pretty much guaranteed to at this point, I think he's done an amazing job, yeah. Look at the budget you had. Look at the way he's turned that squad around in the summer. He's basically gone to the thrift shop, bought a load of players and turned them into diamonds in a lot of cases. I think he's done a fantastic job. I think if you'd have... I didn't feel positive about Huddersfield Town in pre-season. If you'd offered me like 20th for Huddersfield Town at the start of the season, I'd have took it, because they didn't look great in pre-season and with the summer recruitment, but they've been fantastic. So yeah.
When we did our predictions at the start of the season, I think if you watch that video back, and this isn't like me, Brady, but I might have been the most optimistic Town fan. I think I predicted us finish 16th, and everyone else seemed to be like 21st, 20. There was a few people thinking we'd get relegated.
Yeah. I predicted.
The lads, I think the NTT 20 lads put you to go down.
Yeah, they did.
I certainly wasn't far off. I think I went probably 20th, maybe. I had Blackpool, which obviously looks bad now, Hull and Derby, obviously, to go. They were my three to go down. You probably weren't far above that dotted line. So I think the job he's done is up there with Nathan Jones and up there with what Wayne Rooney's doing. I think if you get in the playoffs, I think I would probably put him as above those and probably for manager of the season if you get in the playoffs. Certainly if you go up.
Okay. Well, the hot take, do you think Wagner did a good job, though? I know they're saying get Wagner back, and I know he's not done as great since he's left town, but, again, I suppose it's comparing them both, but, do you think Carlos did a better job than Wagner? I suppose we've still got a bit to go, haven't we? So
I would probably say if he gets you in the playoffs, yes, even if you don't go up, just purely because of where the squad was in the summer. But obviously, Wagner did an unbelievable job. That's not, it was a fairy tale story and not that dissimilar. You didn't have an amazing squad that year, but he got the maximum out of every single player and good recruitment in January to get Izzy Brown in from Rotherham, etc., to get Aaron Moy, who no one had relatively heard of in England before he signed for Huddersfield. So he did an amazing job, don't get me wrong. But looking at it now, Carlos Corberan's stock is certainly higher than David Wagner's, regardless of whether you get promoted or whether you don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom, we've heard from Elliott. We love a bit of nostalgia. Are you agreeing with this hot take? You're not buying it? Do you think it's shit, like Elliott said?
Probably shouldn't have quite worded it like that. But.
I don't think it's shit because I was only just when I heard he got sacked the other day. I want to say bring him back now, but I do. If Town went up, Carlos stays. But if Town went up or if Carlos went, I don't know.
If Carlos got poached or whatever, it's a completely different dynamic.
It's a difficult one bringing managers back as well, isn't it? That's the thing. It's really weird looking at Wagner's kind of managerial career. So he did really well with us, but then everywhere else he's gone, he's had like a good start, and then it's just nosedived. Like when he went to Schalke,
awful at Schalke, wasn't he? At Schalke, he wasn't just like he didn't do well. Like they went down the lowest points totals.
Basket case, Brady. But he started really well. I think he's a very good kind of short-term fix manager. I'm surprised like Watford haven't gone for him yet. Do you know what I mean?
He was linked with West Brom, wasn't he? And I actually thought that made a lot of sense. I know they went to Ishmael and now they've got, big Steve Bruce. But I could have seen him there. I think that could have worked.
I think it could have worked if they weren't initially going for Chris Wilder.
Yeah, true.
No, they turned Chris Wilder down to then go after David Wagner and then get Ismail. Let's be fair, anything in the Championship is a downgrade compared to Chris Wilder, isn't it? So that would have been a ridiculous thing to do.
Well, all right, Carlos.
I don't agree with the hot take, Brady. I wouldn't.
You don't agree?
I wouldn't sack Carlos just to get Wagner back. Although it sounds nice on paper, the nostalgia and how wonderful David Wagner was. What a beautiful man he was.
What a beard.
I wouldn't do it.
No. Sorry, Tom. You.
Nah, I'd be handed be like hovering over the phone for a second.
Then delete his number.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Elliot. I think if Carlos got poached is a different question, but Carlos has done a great job this season. Like I think we all talked about it. I didn't expect it. I wondered if we were the right fit for each other, but he has worked wonders. To be honest, I know Town with players are bringing back former players, but I'm not so sure with managers. Like if Wagner comes back to Town, I want it to be because he's come to watch a game and like he gets to see everyone again, and it's a nice day. But I don't know if it would work out second time. Let
him read out like the halftime numbers when you're in the playoff semi-final or something. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Or he's like an honorary guest somewhere.
Huggy's testimonial.
Yeah, that's probably a little
Huggy's testimonial.
I'll be there for that.
Bring him back for Huggy's testimonial. But I don't know.
I don't think Carlos would get perched as well. I think he's a very interesting man, and I think kind of once he's got something going, he's going to want to see how far he can take it. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know what sort of, because you'd imagine it would have to be a Premier League club, certainly for where they are at the minute, unless one of the teams that came down like a Norwich, or not Norwich, because obviously they're happy with Dean Smith, but unless like a Watford or a Norwich or Sean Dyche, like Burnley or something, unless a club of that sort of stature, it's going to have to be a Premier League club to get in. And I don't really see what club would be taking that gamble at this point on one very, very good season, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure there's that many clubs that are geared to make that sort of jump, because I think you obviously need to invest in not just that, but the coaching methods and everything. You've got to give it time, like Huddersfield have been prepared to do. So I wouldn't be worried about him particularly getting poached, but he's done it. He's done a great job.
He deserves time now as well after this season, definitely. 100%.
And he's, again, maybe we're just trying to make ourselves feel better and say, like, I hope we've got a better chance of keeping him. But, he's really involved in, like, he's changed the diets at the club, like, of the players, and he's really involved in all that stuff. And I don't think you get as much control, if you move to another club.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Carlos would like that because, we've said it before, but like Huddersfield, they aren't the biggest club. And I think that works for Carlos because he gets to have more control. And I think, like you say, if you go to a Premier League club, it's a bit different. And he has only had one good season, really, if we're being honest. But what a hell of a season it's been. And
50% success rate, though. 1 out of 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think, okay, so that's a resounding no. So, sorry, hot taker.
It was a good hot
firmly
take.
Disagreed.
Don't put yourself down.
It wasn't a good hot take. Hot takes are good where they're spicy, but there's a little bit where you wonder, maybe, but no, I'm not having that one.
Okay. Well, if Elliott's saying no, we've all, we all agree. So I think we'll call it there. But thanks to Tom and Elliott for coming on. Cheers to everyone for listening as always. And thank you to Magic Rock for sponsoring the podcast. Don't forget you can get 10% off with the code AHTTC10. Tom, that's a lovely scarf you've got spotting in the background there as well.
I got a nice little present from Magic Rock, which was lovely. A few cans that a couple are left, so I have to get another order in. Absolutely. And listeners, as I've mentioned, there will be another Magic Rock competition for the next home game, so keep your eyes peeled for that. So we'll call it there. Tom and I will be back to preview the Luton game, and ta-ta for now and up the town.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.